I'm just gonna wait for a few more people to settle in. But as Julie said, I'm Kristen Ma. Hopefully some of you are familiar with Pure and Simple. In advance, I do need to apologize that I have the sniffles. And for some reason, every year this happens at the Whole Life Expo. And even one year they moved it to like accommodate the Great Cliff, and I got sick then too. So I'm gonna power through, and hopefully you'll get some great information anyways. And also, like, just because we're settling in, it's not pertinent information. I do want to say that I am very open to people putting up their hands and asking questions, because I think some of the most compelling information that I've given has come from people doing that. So I'm trying to, be more free-flowing. It's not in my nature as like a pitta predominant person. For those of you who know Ayurveda, but I do think that it makes it a lot more valuable for you. So. Are we gonna close the door, or are we still waiting for people? Okay. Okay, so thank you for coming to my talk. I'm really excited that there is great turnout and that so many people are interested in anti-aging from a holistic point of view, because it definitely wasn't always this way. Now, Pure and Simple is about 13 years old right now, and at the beginning, we really had to educate people, and I'm just really excited, and I'm just, like I said, excited that so many people have kind of converted to a more natural view of beauty. I remember the first talk I did at the Whole Life Expo, which was about 7 years ago, actually, and I had followed a practitioner who was talking about holistic interventions for cancer care. And I worked with my mother, and she was doing what Andrea is doing today. She kind of looked at me and she was like, ugh, like now you have to go and talk about like lotions and creams after something that's such a profound subject. And what I really want to tell everyone here is that, as superficial or vain as the beauty industry might be perceived, it actually can be very meaningful and very profound when you look at it from a health perspective. And that's what really inspires me, because if I thought it was just about like beautiful makeup colors and shaping eyebrows, that I would find it a very compelling industry, but I don't think I would be as passionate or want to devote my life to it. So hopefully, if there's one thing that you can take out of this talk today, is how we can use our skin as a form of understanding what's going on inside our bodies as well, and how, in some ways, it can transform the way we look at ourselves and how we look at self-care. So that's the lens that I'm going to be speaking to you from today. And I love anti-aging because aging is something that we're all going to go through, and I don't think of it as an ailment. It's not like acne, which is something I suffered with for years. It's a natural course of life, and it's a beautiful part of living life. So today, just to give you an overview, what we're going to be talking about is, the concept of anti-aging and why we have anti-aging skincare, what exactly skin aging is. So I'm going to be going through the skin layers, and so you have a deeper understanding from an esthetician's perspective, root causes, which will be I'll be illustrating the modality of Ayurveda to you, and that to me is like one of the most fun parts of my talks. And then obviously treatments and alternatives and ways we can support our tissues in order to have great, healthy aging. So I like to start the discussion with, why do we even want anti-aging? Why do we look for anti-aging solutions? And I think this is a really important discussion, because every day I work with women who come in wanting to alter something about the way they look. And I think, to me, sometimes, like, I see such beautiful women that seem like they don't recognize that within themselves. And I just really like to talk about how we can shift our view into perhaps a healthier point of view. So I do think that a lot of the time, we seek out anti-aging from a place of fear. And when I really think about it, I'm like, what are we afraid of? Really, aging is just changing. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with changing. And when we look at it from that perspective, it's about how do we support this change in a way that's healthy and positive, and that we look great, and we look great because we feel great, but obviously we feel great because we also look great. It also can come from a belief system, rooted in a belief system. And unfortunately, in our society, I think that too often youth is kind of a focus in our media. And in some ways, I find this kind of funny, because I I remember myself in my youth, and I would not trade what I have today for that. I can't even express. I think that, people, as we age, we become hopefully more aware. I'm a much more compassionate person, and if I had to trade that for youth, I just wouldn't think that there would be a point. So I think looking at anti-aging from that perspective of understanding that it's part of growth, and that the word anti is something I actually don't like using, but I use it because it's more like people know what I'm talking about instead of I tried to use the word Zen aging for a while. No one knew what I was talking about. But what I like to do at Pure and Simple is look at it from a place of wellness. Now, when we are healthy and our tissues are healthy, they are going to be moist, you'll have better elasticity, you won't lose tissue as much, and we're going to talk about that in the Ayurvedic piece of this presentation, because when we have a vata imbalance or an air imbalance, you lose tissue more easily. So it's about grounding as well as nourishing your internal body and obviously your external, your skin as well. So in terms of explaining signs of aging, and I have a unique view as an esthetician, I look at it and I think probably more technical point of view, I wanted to educate you so that you kind of understand what's going on in the skin, as well as that there are layers to the skin. So different ailments will manifest in different layers of the skin, and this is really important for treatment, because if you have a problem that's happening in the blood system, you can't treat it just with cream, for instance. You have to go and you have to treat the blood system. So I think this is very valuable. And our skin is actually made up of 3 layers. We have the epidermis, which is what you see on the surface. It's primarily made up of dead skin cells. We have the lower layer, which is the dermis layer, where our skin cells are manufactured. And this is a very important layer when we're looking at anti-aging for cell turnover, et cetera. And then we have our fatty layer. And I think also it's great to bring up this concept of the 3 layers, because we often think of skin as something that we just see and what's on the outside, but it just shows that even within the tissue, there's depth to that, and there's an internal component to that as well. So the epidermis. The epidermis is the most superficial layer. Like I said, it's primarily made up of dead skin cells. And when we see signs of aging, such as fine lines and dry texture, you're looking at the epidermis. So when people say that you have exposure to the elements, so whether it's sun or too much pressure from wind, or different temperatures from cold to hot, because in the wintertime we go from a very hot environment, a cold environment, to a warm one inside, that's attacking like the epidermis. So you can get damage externally. So the root cause of fine lines, and I'm talking about superficial lines, not deep expression lines, is dehydration, unprotected skin, and often stress. Because even though we're talking about a superficial layer of skin, if we are dehydrated, you will also see that your epidermis is dehydrated. And I see that when I do facials, when people are sick, like myself right now, their skin is drier because they are dehydrated. The dermis layer is the second layer right underneath the epidermis. And this is primarily made up of connective tissue, so not what we see. And this is where you start to see deeper lines, because the dermis either is thinning, as well as there can be damage to your collagen. And then also hyperpigmentation can manifest. So if you have sun damage, it's penetrating and causing dysfunction within that manufacturing of the skin cell layer, causing an irregular dispersion of pigment. And broken capillaries. So you can see broken capillaries here. And like I said, you can't treat broken capillaries with a cream. You can defend the skin, increasing the barrier on the epidermis. But if you want to treat the dermis, you have to usually use treatments that are a bit more, they're just a bit deeper. And then we have our fatty layer. So the fatty layer is what gives our skin tissue. And so when we start to see thinning of the skin, as well as loss of tone, often it happens in the fatty layer. Also, I like to bring up with this layer the concept of muscle and bone loss. So, beyond the fatty layer, sagging and a lack of firmness can happen from losing bone or muscle as we age. So that's why it's so important to make sure that we're being nourished properly, so that you don't accelerate that loss of tissue. So as you can see, we at Pure and Simple take a 4-prong approach. So we do like to look at your skincare routine, which is kind of our forte. We are a skincare manufacturing company, as well as protection. So protection is within skincare, but I think for this subject matter, it warrants its own information, as well as skin treatments, and then Ayurveda. So I see health through the lens of Ayurveda. So when I am talking about holistic health, it will be in the context of Ayurveda. So talking about skincare, is everyone okay? Because I feel like I'm like fighting someone else. Reminds me of like Aerosmith and Run DMC. Like, do you know what I'm talking about? Okay. So as long as you can all hear me. Okay. So why natural? And this is the core of what we do. And so I always put a slide, even though I want to concentrate a lot on Ayurveda, because it's really important. And hopefully this is already knowledge for a lot of you, but it may not be for all of you. So natural is really important because it tends to be more gentle than chemical counterparts, meaning there are no chemical dyes, harsh detergents like sodium lauryl sulfate. When we first opened our business at Pure & Simple about 13 years ago, I think we had about 50% of our clients being people who had rosacea. So they were actually coming to us from all over the province because we were the first natural spa in in Toronto, and they needed to find options that weren't going to irritate their skin. Even perfumes, like when I talk about gentleness, I think about also, does it assault like one's internal body? Some people get headaches or they have sensitivity to chemical fragrances. And I find that that's not the case with natural essential oils. Non-comedogenic. So if your product has a base of petroleum, that's very clogging. Petroleum doesn't penetrate the skin properly, and it forms an occlusion. So you end up clogging your pores, and while the whole point of an occlusion is to lock in moisture, but that also means that you're locking moisture out. So the product's not actually feeding your skin, and you're not accepting moisture from the atmosphere as well. And then I think it also takes a more holistic view of beauty when you're going natural, because we absorb everything that we put on our skin very deeply. And some people are a bit skeptical about that, and I like to use examples like the nicotine patch. You put it on, it goes into your bloodstream, and it affects whether you crave nicotine or not. I know other women who have used birth control patch. So what we put on our skin has a profound effect on our internal bodies. So when we choose our beauty care products, we have to look at how effective it is for our skin, but also how is it affecting our internal body. And then this goes hand in hand with a more long-term approach, because again, when we're supporting wellness as anti-aging, rather than just trying to fix something topical, you need to be supporting that with good skincare that's not harmful for you. Okay, so I want to give a rundown of what a skincare regime entails for, I would say, recommended for anyone over 35. We actually dramatically lose or decrease collagen production at age 25, but this starts to kind of show up in our mid-30s. So when we're cleansing, so I do recommend cleansing. I know there's actually some debate about whether cleansers are necessary or not, and I recommend cleansing, but I usually, I would say 95% of the time, over age 35, recommend a milk cleanser. And there are different textures. There are light ones that won't make you feel greasy or filmy, and then there are much more emollient ones. Hydration and nourishment are key, and I need to make the differentiation between hydration and moisturization. So hydration speaks to water content. So people are like, oh, I'm using oil, I don't know how much more oil, heavy I can get, but my skin's still dry. And that's because they're lacking water. Our skin cells are made up of oil, water, and protein. So we need to make sure that we're giving our skin water as well. And then we also do need to give our skin oil. As we age, we lose oil. We don't produce as much sebum. And oil is a wonderful protection. So I know when I had acne, I was really terrified of using oil, but it was actually what helped clear up my skin because I rebalanced my oil production. And then protection. So protection can come in the form of sunscreen. I think that we all know about protecting our skin from a UV point of view, but it also just can come from your moisturizer. I was talking about it being a barrier because that's what our natural sebum is. It's really a barrier to protect our skin. And so in the wintertime, I like to recommend a really rich moisturizer because it gives you a barrier between your skin and the harsh elements. And then this is a great crossover. So maintenance through facial treatments. It will give you everything that I was talking to you about with regime, hydration, etc. But also you'll get a chance to detoxify your pores so you can absorb your moisture better, as well as increase circulation. And I'm going to be talking about how important circulation is in anti-aging, but also stress management. And I think that I don't even think stress management includes everything that I mean. I think that sometimes that setting aside time for therapeutic treatment for yourself is really important. I've had clients weep in their facials, and I was thinking about telling this story, and I was like, I don't mean like I'm so good, it brought her to tears. But I had this one client who started to cry a bit, and I was a bit startled, and I asked her, what's wrong? Am I doing something wrong? And she was like, no, I just haven't felt this relaxed in years. And she had 3 kids, and she'd obviously been very, tired. She's tired because she has so many things and obligations to do. But for me, it was very important to give her a treatment that was therapeutic, because it's really important to reground and remember how important you are, because how are you, this is something I have to learn at work sometimes, is how do you serve others if you're not serving yourself? So this ties into a great bridge into holistic aging, because again, topical treatments are great for restoring hydration, but I think also they speak to, that mental emotional plane, and kind of really leads into the idea of holistic health. So I'm going to be talking about Ayurveda, and I wanted to get a quick show of hands of how many of you know what Ayurveda is. Okay, great. About 50-50, maybe a little over 50, which is great, because years ago it would be like 5 people. So for those of you who don't, I hope this will be really interesting. For those of you who do, I hope that you'll get this from a beauty context. So Ayurveda, and I am an Ayurvedic practitioner, is an Eastern medicine. It's a healing modality that is rooted from the traditions in India. So it's a sister science to yoga. So the idea of mind, body, spirit balance is something that yoga and Ayurveda share. And Ayurveda is that medicinal part. And the idea behind Ayurveda is that we are all trying to attain balance for health. So there are 3 energies that we all possess within our bodies. Similar to Chinese medicine with the idea of yin and yang, they have vata, pitta, and kapha. And so what makes us unique is the composition of energies within our body. So there's vata, which is characterized by air and space, pitta, which is characterized by fire and heat, and kapha, which is characterized by earth and water. And again, you can kind of see the yin and yang in there with the pitta versus kapha. So those of us who have strong vata will tend to be like air, so very intangible, ever changing and moving, like the tendencies of air. My mother is very vata, so she lacks tissue. You'll have drier, more brittle tissue because air, again, very intangible. It's dry, it's cool. Like I said, less oil, usually not very willowy silhouette, so not a lot of abundance in terms of muscle tissue and adipose tissue. But also from a mental emotional plane, they tend to be very forward thinking, fast moving, fast paced, loving change, and sometimes it's very difficult for vatas to feel grounded. So when there's too much vata, this can translate into ADD, insomnia, anxiety, just a general scatteredness, and then feeling like there's a lack of groundedness. So what's really important to take away from Ayurveda is, yes, I'm naming some really great qualities and some not so great qualities, and it's about obtaining balance. So there's no good or bad trait, it's just whether we're in balance or not. Pitta is the fire dosha, and it's characterized by heat, inflammation. From a skincare point of view, you're gonna have redness, prone to eczema, rosacea, acne, and you tend to have an athletic build, so medium size but good muscular tone, and then if characteristics tend to be fiery, so ambitious, competitive, type A personalities, impatient. The great thing about pittas is they're very organized, they communicate clearly, but they can be also a little bit demanding. And I am a Pitta predominant person. My husband calls me a bossy boot, I guess you could say. You can tell someone is high Pitta if they get hangry, which is something that my friends call getting angry when you're hungry. So because of the fire within the digestive system, that translates into Pitta characteristics. And then there's Kapha. So Kapha is earth and water. So unlike the intangible, ever-moving, ever-changing air, Kapha is stable, it's full of tissue, accumulation, congestion, and they tend to be more voluptuous. Kapha governs fertility. If you have too much Vata, not enough Kapha, you might have issues with fertility. And from a skincare point of view, they have thicker, more oily skin, and they usually tend to age the best because as we age, we lose tissue, become more Vata, so those with inherent Kapha tend to fare better. So the idea of balance and imbalance can be a little bit hard to understand, but how I like to explain it was actually explained to me by an Ayurvedic physician. He said, think of yourself as a cup, and you are born with a specific ratio of, let's say, Pitta 50%, Kapha 10%, and Vata 20%. But you're predominantly Pitta. Then you start to do Pitta things. You're really competitive. You're really stressed out at work, and you're really competitive with other people. You're playing competitive sports. You're eating spicy, acidic foods. You're running a marathon to get in shape and very goal-oriented. And you start to pour more Pitta fluid into your cup. And eventually, it starts to spill over. And it spills into your tissues, and you get things like inflammation in the GI tract, maybe acid reflux, you get inflammation in the skin. So that's what we mean about balance versus imbalance. There is no good or bad dosha. It's about, have you balanced your doshas? What are we looking at that's in excess? Is everyone with me so far? Okay. So the doshas as we age. Now to add another layer onto this, and this is such a complex, beautiful philosophy, but this is very pertinent to the piece of aging, is that as we age, we are in different phases of life that are governed by dosha. So when we are young, we tend to be the most kapha we'll ever be. So, while I'm a pitta predominant person, the most kapha I ever was in my 0 to 20. And that's when you're full of tissue and you have the most oiliness, and you might have the same characteristics as kapha, which tend to be a little bit more hard to let go of things, being more internally centered, unlike Vata, who's very forward-thinking and a little bit ever-moving. Kaphas tend to like routine. They're accumulating information, so they have great memories. When we're younger, we have much better memories than when we're older. So we tend to be as Kapha as we ever will be. And in in the middle part of our life, we tend to be the most Pitta. And for me as an esthetician, this is also really interesting, because this is when I start to see rosacea. Actually, rosacea is also called adult acne, because it usually happens within the Pitta stage of life. And it actually usually happens in the cheeks and nose, which is, according to Ayurveda, the area of the skin that is governed by Pitta. So inflammation happens most likely in this stage of life. And then in the latter part of life, as we mature, we become more Vata. So I think that Ayurveda says something beautiful, that yes, we may lose tissue, but it helps the soul ascend, to another realm. So hopefully, as we become more Vata, yes, you lose tissue and oiliness, and that's unfortunate, but hopefully we also get those wonderful characteristics of being more connected to the universe, being more spiritual, philosophical, really being comfortable with the conceptual. So I want to take you through different characteristics of aging and how they pertain to the doshas. Now, with Vata, they tend to be very prone to fine lines. They have the least robust tissue, so they tend to be more prone to dehydration. So hydration is important, circulation is very important, exfoliation, so you're constantly turning over your skin cells, and rejuvenation. So how do we do that? Well, through using proper skincare. So you're gonna want to incorporate a serum and a moisturizer. And I think a serum is a really important addition when you're going through this stage of life and you're starting to see fine lines, because again, the serum usually is more water-based, and that's gonna give you more hydration rather than oil. Also vitamin F, which are fatty acids. So, having great omega fatty acids in our diet as well as in our skincare can be really beneficial because we need to nourish vata. We need to support them. We need to keep them warm, moist, and have good ample fats in their diet and in their skincare. Then microdermabrasion. So this will work. Microdermabrasion is a peeling treatment. It's a manual peeling treatment. And we have a couple different kinds of abrasions at Pure and Simple. But what I like about it for vata skin is to do it lightly, not too aggressively because their skin is thinner, but it helps in a couple of different ways. You're going to slough off the dead skin cells and reveal the more moist skin cells underneath. You're also going to be encouraging cell turnover. So you're going to have, an increase of healthy skin cells being produced. And then third of all, you also get increased circulation. And vatas need warmth, and therefore they need to support their circulation. Circulation helps increase collagen production. So that's one thing that you'll look probably in almost every anti-aging product and treatment will be some aspect of trying to increase circulation because of that. And we also have an LED light, which also helps to increase circulation and therefore also increase collagen production. Now, internally, we need to support pacifying vata. So how do we do that? Well, we need to increase fats in the diet. Like I said, we need to keep them warm. Things like herbs like ginger have been traditionally used for vata because they increase circulation, they're warming, and it's good for the immune system because vatas tend to be a little bit more delicate and they don't have a great immune system. So it's all about supporting and nurturing this dosha. Skin laxicity is also a vata issue because it is when you start to lose tissue and you have what estheticians call redundant skin. Now, I think I always kind of cringe when I hear that, but it does describe it quickly that you have less structure underneath the skin, less bone, less tissue, less muscle, and so you have an excessive skin. So this is what I was talking about. You can't you can't firm up the skin just through a moisturizer. You have to work on the deeper tissues. So we have a great treatment that's called the radio frequency, and again, it helps to bolster tissue in the dermis layer, and because you really need to be looking at that deeper layer. Now, internally, this is why protein is so important, especially for vata. They do tend to have irregularity in the digestive system, so you have to choose proteins that are appropriate for that individual. But protein is very important, and vitamin D. So vitamin D is known to be really good for in supporting the immune system, but it's also really great for maintaining bone and muscle mass. Now, pittas, as they age, tend to accumulate more pitta. We do tend to accumulate the dosha that we're strongest in, but that's not always the case. And they tend to show signs of aging through redness. So you'll see a lot of broken capillaries as they age. So what do? First and foremost, we have to avoid irritants. So when I was talking about natural skincare being gentle, this is really important for pittas. We need to hydrate and cool. Now, hydration is actually a form of increasing your barrier function. So you'll protect the skin by bolstering hydration because when your skin cells are nice and plump, they're taut and they don't let things through. They don't let irritants through, etc. And this is really important for those who have acne as well. You boost their hydration and often they don't get the bacterial infections that cause a pustule. Then we need to use ingredients that are anti-inflammatory and protect the skin. So, ingredients like aloe, rose, chamomile, these are really important for pitta, as well as protecting the skin. So when we were talking about SPF being important, as well as a moisturizer as a barrier, that is very important. Now, elastin is very important for pittas because it'll give your skin suppleness. And we like to compare the capillaries almost to like an elastic band. If it's nice and moist, it'll be flexible and elastic. And if it's dry, it will also snap and break. So hydration is very important, but also increasing elasticity through elastin is important. And you can find that in a number of products. Ours, obviously, but there are many products on the market that also have elastin and collagen. Now, digestive healing is really important because this can be a huge source of inflammation. So when people have rosacea, which is a very obvious inflamed skin state, I like to look at what are their food sensitivities? Are they being constantly inflamed every day by eating the wrong things? and therefore causing subtle inflammation on a daily basis. And then stress management. Pittas are type A, they are fiery, they tend to put a lot of pressure on themselves, and so this tends to subtly inflame them all the time. So people who have a lot of inflammation and broken capillaries and rosacea, we have to look at, sometimes what their perspective on life is, how much can they take on, because, this is part of that idea of mind, body, spirit balance, and how that you can only be truly healthy when you also address that emotional point of view as well. Sorry. I forgot to talk about treatments. So treatments, we were talking about cooling, anti-inflammatory. We have an abrasion, which actually uses water. So instead of using something that's really like friction-based and irritating, we're actually using cooling water as a way to blast the skin and remove dead skin cells. So I find that really good for people who want the peeling and rejuvenation for anti-aging, but don't want to disturb their skin that may be more sensitive. And then there's LED light. So we're supporting, again, collagen production to increase hydration and give your skin a better barrier function. And then lastly, deeper wrinkles. So deeper wrinkles tend to show up in kapha skin because they tend to have thicker skin tissue. So they don't maybe get fine lines, those little surface superficial lines in dehydration, but they'll have deeper folds into their skin tissue. So again, what we need to look at is the dermis layer and support collagen production. So a lot of those deeper lines will be treated with something like IPL. And IPL is a technology that uses light therapy to stimulate collagen production, and we can use them in the areas that one is experiencing these fine lines or deeper lines, as well as microcurrent therapy. So you can actually use microcurrents to stimulate collagen and sometimes also stimulate muscles so that they're more firm and lifted as well. So that sometimes also helps because as we lose elasticity and laxness, that's when you start to see some of those deeper expression lines. So as I was saying that, you have to attack beauty from all fronts and from an Ayurvedic point of view, that's gonna incorporate mind, body, and spirit. And that's the lens that we at Pure and Simple see beauty from. So I hope that this has helped you a lot, but I have made this talk shorter because I wanted to open the floor to questions, and I actually usually find that some of the most interesting information comes from the open forum. So I was wondering if any of you had questions. Yes. Our machine uses a variety of colors. So we have red, we have blue, and it depends because sometimes with like the Pitta person, you want to do a combination of something that's going to be supporting collagen and anti-inflammatory, where sometimes with the red lights, and we have a pulsating red light, it's great for increasing collagen, but it can also be a bit inflaming. So we have red, blue, green, and yellow within our LED. Any other questions? Yes? With LED, managing expectations is also really important. With frown lines, they tend to be muscular. So what I like to do is make sure that we look at relaxing those muscles. Sometimes facial massage is really good for that. You can increase the collagen so that the damaged collagen from frown lines can lessen, but unless you relax the muscles there, it's really hard. Now that's why Julie was talking about Botox before, where you're atrophying giving muscle atrophy to that area, which I don't think is very good because you can also risk other adverse reactions. So if you overdo it, I've also seen like pretty bad side effects. But the idea is that you're relaxing those muscles. Now, from a natural perspective, you can't really do that except through like massage. You can also sometimes do it a little bit with facial acupuncture, but also with facial acupuncture, you're stimulating collagen through the needling because you're stimulating the circulation as well. I think also like acupuncture is, dispersing blockages within the body, which is really important as we age. But, from the more aesthetic point of view, it is stimulating collagen. Frown lines are hard. That's something that I actually am really concerned about. And I have a couple blog posts with solutions that I've tried because I am quite preoccupied with frown lines. So I've used things like those stickers for the frown lines, which I actually have seen a difference with, because you're trying to train your muscles to relax. So it's about muscle relaxation, whether you do that with stickers or you do that through massage. You're just trying to retrain the muscles. Some facial exercises can also be helpful, because if you strengthen the muscles that are converse to the frowning, you can also lessen the strength of the muscles that you are frowning. Anything else? Yes. Sorry, I thought I saw a hand. Yes. Okay, temperature. So I'm just thinking, he asked about how I think that temperature affects the body. Definitely temperature is a faction, because in Ayurveda, we're looking at elements. So fire, earth, air. So people who are pitta can't be too overheated. If you're too overheated, your capillaries will break. Even from like a dermatologist point of view, if you overexercise and you're in saunas, that will rev up your circulation and your capillaries will break. When it's summertime and it's really hot, pitta tends to be aggravated more. So seasons play a huge role. I think that even the wintertime can be very hard for vatas, because your capillaries constrict and your circulation is impeded, especially to your extremities. So this is also not going to be very good for aging. And sometimes you'll actually see the first signs of aging in a Vata person will be their hands, because they don't get circulation to those extremities. So definitely, our environment plays a huge role in balance. We need to balance in relationship to our surroundings, whether it be temperature from the weather or our relationships, that's an environmental, as well as environmental pollutants. So it's very much a synergy between us and the atmosphere. Yes? Okay, so the question was, what Ayurvedic oils are best for skin health? Now that's a huge question, because it depends on dosha and what issue that we're looking at treating. Okay, so for aging, I was gonna say, well, traditionally with Ayurveda, we love using guduchi, neem, and turmeric. These are great for supporting, cleansing the blood, and the blood feeds the skin. Now, when we're looking at things like aging specifically, you need something that's going to be, especially if you're more vata or you're having vata signs of aging, something a bit more stimulating, because turmeric, neem, and these herbs are more anti-inflammatory, but again, we want to clean the blood so that we have healthy tissue. Now, for vata, I had mentioned ginger being good. Anything that's warming, so even like cinnamon, some of the peppers are used, even in the essential oil, like pipali oils are used. Tulsi is used a lot. I'm looking at actually sourcing a Tulsi hydrosol, which is the water extracted from Tulsi, which is also known as holy basil. Again, I advocate the Ayurvedic herbs and oils, etc. But what I really want people to take away is the concepts. So the idea that we need to subtly stimulate circulation. You can do that with a number of things. You can do that with geraniums sometimes. But from an Ayurvedic point of view, like the big ones would be, like I said, Tulsi is a favorite. And like hingvastic internally. But there's so many, because it's just about choosing the oils or the herbs that have that action of supporting immunity and slightly stimulating your circulation. Pardon? No, I was talking about a herb called hingvastic. And so it's like slightly warming and it's very good internally. But like I said, sometimes things are harder to source. And so what I really want people to take away is what we can do to increase circulation. So it's about balancing the vata energy as well. Yes?
Vitamin F is a vitamin we don't hear of.
Yes.
But on your screen, you showed that the deeper
Yes.
sources are good for vitamin F.
So vitamin F are our fatty acids. So while we might not hear about vitamin F, we probably have all heard about how important fatty acids are. So linoleic acid and then linolenic acid. And I really like sources like evening primrose. Evening primrose oil is something that we use a lot of. Borage, again, is something that we love to use at Pure and Simple in a lot of our formulations. So internally, like you can get a lot of fatty acids from your dietary things like flax, for instance. Coconut. So, and coconut is great also as an anti-inflammatory. It is one of the traditional oils used for pitta, so to calm inflammation. And I actually really like it for people who have breakouts. So let's say I have a client who is aging and she wants moisture, but she also is getting some breakouts. Coconut oil will bring down the inflammation of the breakouts, as well as it has slight antibacterial properties as well. Is there any other questions? Yes. Okay, rosacea. I have actually a whole separate talk on rosacea, so I'll try to do the best I can. I also, on my YouTube channel, which is Holistic Vanity, I think it's like I should have it up there, but youtube.com/holisticvanity, I have a full hour presentation like today just on rosacea, and I actually have quite a few like little interviews with other health practitioners just about rosacea. Rosacea is primarily a pitta issue, so it's inflammation. And that's why when you look at the list of things that, you know, even a Western medicine doctor will tell you to avoid, it's alcohol, caffeine, exercise, stress, and everything that's going to stimulate circulation, everything that's going to bring the blood flow to the skin, especially in the face. You can tell a person is prone to rosacea if they, you know, exercise and they get really red in the face. So, like I was saying for the anti-aging slide for pitta skin types, that bringing down inflammation internally is really important. So diet is huge, but also exercise. Because I find that a lot of people who are pitta predominant tend to like to do really intense exercise. They like to like run the marathon, like lift heavy weights, and sometimes doing cooling exercises like yoga that's not Ashtanga, that's super like pitta yoga. We're talking about like a good relaxing hatha class can be strengthening but also cooling. Pranayama is really great too. You can actually lower your acidity through pranayama because even from a Western like physiological point of view, we can purge excess acid through our breathing. So breathing exercises are really good for bringing down pitta as well. I find with rosacea, it's really like a re-engineering of how one views their life sometimes. Because if you have so much inflammation in like the way you construct your day because it's really high stress, or like you put a lot of stress on oneself, that is really powerful than rosacea. So there's a lot of things that one can do for rosacea, and usually like I try to take things little by little, removing inflammation from the skincare regime. So coconut oil, adding coconut oil is, you know, one addition. We have a rosacea care line actually from Holistic Vanity, which is part of our offering at Pure+simple, and it's packed with things like aloe. We actually don't use any water in that brand. We actually just use organic aloe vera as the base. And then we have great things like chamomile, calendula, immortelle. So there's just a lot of really great anti-inflammatory things, but it can be, thank you, it can be exploring, again, the internal body and then the emotional body as well. I'm gonna have to take the rest of my questions at the booth because I'm being told that the next speaker needs to start setting up. But thank you so much for attending my talk, and I hope you got something out of it today.